I say all the time that who you are as a brand is really defined by who you serve. So understanding who that is overseas becomes kind of central to your reputation here. You know, if you are certified organic, a lot of brands are. If you're gluten-free certified, a lot of brands are. But possibly in your category, you're certified organic and certified gluten-free, then that becomes a differentiator.
Viewers, welcome to the brand new episode Scaling Plant-Based Food Globally. I am Arihan from Sattviko, and today we have a very eminent personality from the CPG industry, Victoria Ho. Inspired by the power of good food to nourish genuine human connections, Victoria Ho co-founded Sherpa CPG in 2019 to shift a decade of formulation and brand building experience towards helping her fellow makers. From concept through commercialization, Victoria works with natural food and beverage brands to prepare meaningful, clean label products for peak performance at scale and sustainable success on shelf. As the company's brand strategy and formulation specialist, Victoria bridges storytelling, food science to create memorable flavors and innovative functionality across a spectrum of food categories. Her work can be found online, in food service, at retail across 10 countries and all 50 states of America, fulfilling the growing demands for wellness interests such as gluten-free, plant-based, keto, grain-free, low-carb, gut-friendly, probiotic, and many more. So welcome to the Live Sattviko Talks, Victoria. It's a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you so much. I'm so glad to connect with you and excited to chat about plant-based food.
Sure. So Victoria, I would put my first question to you. So I mean, before entering the international market, while we are talking about scaling the brands globally, how important is it for a brand to define a target consumer, understand the market opportunity and the competitive landscape?
That is a very great, if not the greatest question. We could probably speak for several hours just on this, but the one-liner would be that it's essential. And I say this because oftentimes when an overseas brand is looking at entering the American market, they're already an established brand. And many times they're quite successful in their home country, which, you know, if they're not as thoughtful a brand as Sattviko, they may think that that success will easily map over to all segments across all countries. Now, they may run, some translation of a label or kind of figure out what the easiest distribution channel is to enter. But I think that research on the consumer end needs to match the research they did in their native country when they were initially launching their product. I say that really, I would probably split it into three segments. One is flavor profile. If you take something as simple and as staple to the American diet as, let's say, peanut butter, which is one of our most popular flavors here, I have many friends and expats in France, other European countries, in Latin America who can't find that worth their life. You know, they just cannot find good old American peanut butter. On the flip side, you have very popular flavors in Asian countries or in East Asia or in Southeast Asia, things like egg yolk or fish flavored salty snacks. Even in the UK, you have things like roast chicken that you find in chips. Those are very foreign to the United States palate. And so, you know, a bestseller in your native country may be a complete anomaly in the United States. So flavor would be, I think, a key thing to try to shift and see whether your product flavors serve the cravings here in the United States. But second, I think, you know, lifestyle, which is something that Sattviko is very familiar with. There needs to be an approachability when you are an imported brand, particularly because the contemporary American audience has shifted the way that they think about wellness, even in snack foods. particularly with, the last 2 years with COVID. There's much more focus on food as medicine, and the ways that the American consumer is understanding and digesting different types of ingredients or different types of lifestyle choices like gluten-free, like Ayurvedic, like probiotic. Sometimes if you are platforming a particular functionality or a newer lifestyle, dietary lifestyle like Ayurveda, you need to ask kind of your marketing team whether there needs to be an educational component to your brand in addition to the storytelling. And that becomes very essential to ensuring that the American audience kind of understands your point of view. And the last one, I think, just in terms of compliance and sales, the American landscape in terms of retail has many, many different channels. So, you have food service, you have traditional retail, you have natural and organic retailers. Then you have this very odd yet powerful branch of alternative retail, which is things like, conglomerates like TJ Maxx in the United States, which in the UK, possibly India, I know is TK Maxx. That's, housewares plus gourmet items. So you might find food there. And then in the United States, we also have a large contingent of specifically ethnic charged groceries. And so, really as a import brand, understanding which one of those markets may be most receptive to your brand and can help support the marketing initiatives the most strongly to find that initial core audience you need to generate kind of grassroots a fan base for your brand. Those components all factor in. And again, I say all the time that who you are as a brand is really defined by who you serve. So understanding who that is overseas becomes kind of central to your reputation here.
Right. Absolutely right. Well said, Victoria. I think this is very important for the brand to do that realization and understand the market, how the market is behaving. So coming on to my next question to you. I mean, this is in continuation with our first question. I mean, how does a brand, why does a brand, need to focus on the value propositions and the core differentiators in order to place itself in the market?
Yeah, another great question. I mean, half of that is obvious, right? There's just so much choice right now for consumers. And in the United States in particular, the ability to create a food product is difficult, but it's not that difficult to launch a product and sell it regionally, hyper-regionally, or online, right? If you're looking to sell your product on a national platform, or you're really looking to grow a brand to where it's sustainable in a commercial setting, then, giving consumers a clear, concise, and easy way of understanding why they should choose you over the 500 alternates they have on the shelf and the 5,000 alternates they have online becomes really just essential to you building validity as a brand, both direct to consumers, as well as if you're looking at entering the retail setting. Retailers today often look at traction or demand traction, which is a bit of a chicken and egg problem, right? If you don't put me on your shelf, how can I show that I sell a lot of products? So oftentimes, like launching online or doing pop-ups or finding another way to have proof of concept for an import brand, it may be the sales that you have in your native country, which is fantastic, right? It's a potentially a several years worth of an archive of proof of concept. But, those differentiators, again, in the States, some of them may be qualified claims, which you then need to submit applications for to make sure that you get third-party certification, again, to build trust with the consumer. That is essential. Which claims are you making for attributes that can establish trust with your consumers, and how do you kind of narrow that entire bucket of attributes into the ones that most clearly differentiate you? Because there's plenty of attributes you could probably say about your product that are positive, but you need to create a clear hierarchy for consumers so that they get either the most unique ones for your category first, or the collection of attributes that make yours unique. For example, if you are certified organic, a lot of brands are. If you're gluten-free certified, a lot of brands are. But possibly in your category, you're certified organic and certified gluten-free. Then that becomes a differentiator. So, I think to your point, focusing on how to set yourself apart in tangible, factual ways is different than setting yourself apart from, say, flavor or branding or packaging. It is something that is completely subjective, packaging and branding, whereas, claims and qualifications and differentiators, like you're saying, are universal and can be admired in that way.
Right. So also we have kind of also seen a lot of brands now gradually focusing upon more of storytelling rather than the product selling. So what are your thoughts on that? I mean, how important is the storytelling for a brand?
Well, as a self-proclaimed, I'm obsessed with storytelling, so my answer is probably a bit biased, but that comes from having worked with a lot of brands who are in a growth stage of kind of an emerging brand, competing against big food brands in the United States. And part of the very few legs up that a emerging brand can have, because they may not have the distribution power or the financial backing of a larger brand, is authenticity. And so storytelling to me interweaves into the power of engagement with the consumer in several ways. One of which is just tradition, or like what inspired your brand to grow, what inspired you as a founder, or what is the origin story of your brand, right? Connecting kind of from the ground up in terms of where you started and what your vision is. There's also kind of a top-down storytelling, which is how you can show the consumer that your brand is possibly more than just the product that they're eating, right? Like, what is the larger mission that you're serving as a brand? And I think that is one of the most powerful elements of storytelling today, is that, we can talk about the flavors and the nuances of texture and all of that, but consumers really want to understand how you resonate with their life. And even though the specificities of your story may be different, if they see a reflection of themselves in there, or a reflection of the person that they're striving to become, I think, that is what builds loyalty with a brand.
Right, absolutely. I think this is one good way to for a brand to differentiate itself. I mean, with so much of competition in the market being there. So that's a great answer, Victoria. To my next question, which is around your favorite topic on the flavors and the formulation. So this is I wanted to understand. I mean, how can a brand understand and capture those trending flavors of the market and add them to the product profile? How does a brand actually do the evaluation of the flavors? So if you can just put some light on it.
Yeah, I mean, I'll maybe go with the shorter version, which is that a lot of it is based on kind of just market research, compounded with as we are all consumers, right? Yeah. There is plenty of, I would say, like on the ground data at all times for you to absorb and observe. I mean, pre-COVID, it was not abnormal for me to go to the grocery store for 4 to 5 hours a day, like several stores, just to do research, just to walk down the aisles, buying nothing or buying everything. You know, there's just absorbing what the shelf is telling you is selling. There is also, you know, I think when your brand has a specific point of view, and there's certain flavors or regionally authentic dishes or spice blends that are culturally inspired, or, you know, speak to an ethnicity or a romance or a terroir, you know, a provenance of a place that you want to capture, then the pantry and the agriculture of that region or that inspiration certainly informs you. There's also, you know, ingredient-driven flavor profiles where, in order to capture, let's say, the healing powers or the health halo of turmeric, you know, you kind of find the appealing flavors that match with turmeric. If it's a savory seasoning, it might be a curry, right? If it's a sweet version of turmeric, it might be more something like a chai or a ginger. And again, depending on what type of product you make, you look at how to perhaps make that superfood ingredient the most appealing so that it's not too intimidating. It remains approachable. And finally, I think it's very important to understand, like, what flows naturally with your product type. So if you are a snack brand and, you know, you're looking at flavor inspiration, perhaps it's easier to pull flavor inspiration from dishes that are also seasoned or have some sort of dry seasoning blend versus like a beverage or, you know, an ice cream or something that is inherently expected in a liquid format, because you're going to need to find a way to translate a different category over to your category. So, you know, there's lots of things to think about, but with flavor, I mean, the easiest answer is just, you know, the team that's in charge of innovation gets first dibs, right? It's like, what do you love to eat that you feel is missing? And there's that balance there always, I think, with a brand is when you launch a collection, there's a few flavors that you know are hands down going to be good sellers, chocolate, vanilla, you know, etc. There's a couple that really reflect your specific uniqueness of your brand, right? Say a turmeric, a ginger, or, you know, a harissa, a shawarma spice. And then there's maybe one that's, you know, dealer's choice, just it's maybe a little out there. It's probably not going to be your bestseller, but you just love it so much, you know, you can't resist putting it out there, and possibly it becomes something that drives media buzz, even though it may not drive sales. But yeah, it's important to always have, I think, a good finger on the pulse of some best-selling flavors that will at least build that traction we talked about earlier.
True. So I think we would need another an hour or two session on flavors with you specifically. That is something definitely.
I know. I think I said that was a short answer too, so I completely lied. But it might also
very interesting topic as it sounds. Yeah. So sure. Right. So coming on to my next question, which is more around the consumer education and engagement. So how does a brand focus upon educating the consumer on the concept, on the flavors, or on the fortifications that the brand wants to bring into the international market?
I think clarity is really the most important factor here for communication. there is probably some research to be done just on like how much education has been done for you already by other brands. Sometimes it's a lot, sometimes it's none. And, for any brand that's newer brands that are launching in the States, but also specifically brands that are importing or exporting, your packaging really becomes your billboard, your pamphlet, your kind of first opportunity to share anything about your brand with a US consumer versus, brands that kind of pop up in the States. We have the ability we have social media that's regionally fuel the algorithm, right? Or like Instagram or websites or even Amazon brand pages, registered brand pages that share a little bit more of that storytelling and education. But for brands that don't really have immediate access to that, I think it's really using your packaging in a smart way. So what I mean by that is if you need to do education just around what the heck your product is, like if it's something that consumers here have never seen before, like, I don't know, we have these snacks when I visit my relatives in Taiwan. They're found in ethnic stores here, but they're like straight up dried tiny little crabs, right? There's a lot of snacks like that. I don't think for most Americans, they would understand what that is if you just wrote like dried crab snack on the front of a package. So possibly in that instance, you put a window on your package or you have a clear container so people can see right into it. Again, maximizing communication easily. In the same way, if you're using ingredients that need some sort of description or some sort of definition for the consumer, make sure that that's on there. If you're making claims that are tied to ingredients or that are tied to a specific vision or mission, make sure that's on there in a very clear way. And use imagery to your benefit as well, right? If you're going to have photos of your product or ingredients, invest in a good quality photographer and a design team or design agency that's seasoned within the realm of CPG, because most likely what's embedded in their DNA, having worked with CPG products long enough, is what pops and what doesn't, what's legible for a font, a color, etc., and what isn't, and then also compliance factors, to ensure that. So yeah, and education continues in the States with how you can offer your retail partners any sort of support, whether it's like a shelf talker or possibly like a recipe card, anything that you can maybe offer or display near your product, or even to invest in building out a display, like a pop-up display for your product that has more real estate for you to educate. I think all of that helps with a brand that's just trying to connect very quickly. Of course, money is involved typically, but those are great questions because it helps you understand maybe what your ideal budget is in order for a successful launch.
Yeah, true. So coming on to the last question for the session. This is again, since you have spent a good amount of time on helping brands on around health and wellness interests such as gluten-free, plant-based products. So how are you seeing the growing trend of plant-based foods in the American market?
I think there's, definitely the growth is undeniable, but I think it's starting to shift into kind of two different lanes. One of which is plant-based foods that help to just amplify the wellness of a flexitarian diet, right? So these are people who have no interest or desire ever to become fully plant-based or even vegetarian. They're just looking for delicious ways to add more plant-based foods to their diet. And I think in the States right now, as you see with a lot of, plant-based meat analogs in particular, and, plant-based dairy alternatives, cheese, butter, cream cheese, all of that, I think you see more often like the desire for people to find those alternatives that they can swap in once in a while, to boost their wellness. The other kind of faction that I see is a return to plant-based being actual plants, which gets me very excited. So, rather than having a quote unquote plant-based meal that's centered on, veggie dogs and like vegan burgers and things like that, you actually prepare real vegetables and fruits in ways and with seasonings and with traditional techniques that really, really celebrate what vegetables are. And also, there's, I think, an equal excitement around that of finding new fruits, vegetables, seeds, nuts, and ways of combining them that kind of feed that avenue of there's nothing happening in a lab here. These are just nature's gifts, and we're presenting them to you minimally processed and with very crave-worthy flavors that are a different and better and plant-based alternative that you can easily integrate into your lifestyle. And I think that really is the key. Is it's much easier in 2021, gosh, I forgot the year for a second, in 2021 to eat plant-based in the United States and kind of not have the connotation that you're compromising anything. And I think that it's a fantastic time for plant-based companies to lean into that and understand, how they're adding to that excitement.
Right. So great, some great responses from you, Victoria, and I'm sure when the viewers who are the budding entrepreneurs and the people around the world would listen to your queries. I mean, they your answers. I think there would be a lot of queries that would be solved for them, and this would definitely help them get into the international market and understand how it works. So I would like to thank you so much for joining in for the session, and I look forward to host you for another session, which would be specifically around the flavors and get more insights so we can become more specific there.
No, thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to share a conversation with you. I always find it magical that we can connect as though we're next door, half a world apart, quite literally. But the most beautiful thing about food is it is such a universal language, and it really is the easiest and most accessible way to support your own wellness. So I really appreciate Sattviko creating this platform to help entrepreneurs succeed. Possibly we just generated infinite more questions, but that's great because they all have answers.
Yeah.
So thank you so much for having me.
And have a good evening.